So before we can start actually programming, I want to take a little bit of time and talk about what we will actually be covering in this course. So first of all, JavaScript is like a language, and like a language, it has its own grammar. Sort of similar to the English language, another word we can call it is syntax. The syntax is JavaScript's commands, words, and punctuation. Remember when you were younger and you didn't understand English or whatever your primary language was? You went to school and studied. At first the words didn't make much sense, but eventually words made sense more together, grammar was added, and sentences started to form. Before you knew it, you could write a paragraph, or even eventually a novel. This is exactly the same process you grow through when you learn JavaScript or any online programming language. Nothing makes sense at first, but eventually you have no problems working with JavaScript. It just takes time. Keep in mind that every programming language has its own syntax, just like the English language that we speak in our day-to-day lives. Throughout this course, we are also going to be covering many programming concepts that are related to JavaScript and many other online languages. You will be learning about all kinds of exciting things such as strings, variables, statements, HTML, and much, much more. These concepts can then be applied to other languages online, making this course an excellent solution to anyone just getting started with learning web development. By the end of this course, I bet I can have you even talking like a seasoned programmer, as we will be covering all of that as well. For example, now you know what syntax means. With this course, you will also learn the best practices and proven ways to make your programs perform all the best they can. Last but not least, you will of course be doing a lot of programming in this course. By the end of the next video, you will be creating your very first JavaScript program, so you're going to learn a lot. I can definitely assure you of that. So, alright, grab yourself some Java, no pun intended, and let's get started. Let's learn some JavaScript. First of all, we need to make a new folder on our desktop, and I advise you to make it on your desktop so that you can access this folder at any time throughout this course. I made a folder here, and I'm going to call it JavaScript Basics. And what we're going to do here is we're going to open up a file, and we're going to open up a text document, and we can call this document whatever we like. Alright, so we have a name for my text document here, and we're going to again open it up so we can edit it, just so you guys can see. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add a few little syntax things for HTML, just so that everything works here. And you guys don't have to worry about this too much, I'm just going to add this in really quick. Alright, so we have the overall syntax of our HTML document made. And again, don't worry about this too much. I'm going to cover this in more detail later on in the course. I just want to get you guys set up and running. But basically what we have here is we have HTML tags. And basically what these two tags mean is anything within these two tags are going to be our HTML. And then in our HTML tags, we have our script tags. Anything in the script tags is going to be JavaScript. Again, don't worry about this if this is confusing. We'll be covering things like syntax later on. But just keep in mind that all of our JavaScript is going to be in these two script tags right here. So in these two tags, we're going to write our first command. And this command is going to be our alert command. Now, what this command does is it sends a notification box to the user to alert them of whatever message we write. So if we click in our brackets here, and add a message, this message will pop up on the screen in a notification box for the user. So we have our commands entered here, and what we need to do now is after this part is entered here, we need to make sure that there is a semicolon at the end of our command. All commands and statements in JavaScript need to have semicolons after them since they run in order. So if we were to ever to make a statement and not have a semicolon, we're going to get an error, and the next statement will not be able to run until this one is completed. So you always want to make sure it's a semicolon after whatever statement we enter here. You can kind of think of it like a sentence in English. You always want to have a period at the end of your sentence, but in JavaScript, you want to have a semicolon. So now, in order to get this actual program to work, we're going to need to save it. So we're going to go up to File here. We're going to hit Save As. And we're going to save it as whatever name you like. But at the end, you're going to want to make sure you write .html. What this is going to do is it's going to tell our computer to open up this file as an HTML file. So again, if we go back to our folder here, you're going to see that there's now a new document here, and this is going to be a web browser document. So if you guys have Firefox, Google Chrome, or whatever it is you're using, it's now going to be openable in your web browser. So let's double click this and open it up here, and we can see here that our message is now displaying that we wrote earlier in a notification box. And if we hit OK, the program is now done. So this is how we're going to open up our programs, and as we get more familiar with programming in JavaScript, we're going to be using an actual code editor, and that's what we're going to cover later on. But for now, we're just going to be using Notepad for this lesson. So let's open up our document back up. And in this document, we're going to write another command. And this command is going to be slightly different. So let's go over this really quickly. This is called the document.write command. And what this command does is it'll write text onto the page that the user is viewing. So again, in these brackets here, we can enter in some quotations. And we want to make sure there's a semicolon after the end of this command. Don't worry about what the dot means right now. We're going to be covering this later. And if we save this again, and then open it up again, we can see that our first statement that we entered, the notification box pops up, and then if we hit OK, the next statement enters in and it outputs whatever we wrote in the document.write here onto the page. So I wanted to do this to demonstrate you guys that statements basically run one after another. You'll see that it ran the first one first, and then it ran the second one right after the first one completed. And the first one completed after we clicked that OK box. So it's important to understand that JavaScript runs statements from top to bottom. It starts at the top and reads all the way to the bottom, and we'll go through the statements as we enter them in our program. So this looks a little bit confusing and looks a little bit sloppy, and that's because we're using Notepad. As you get through this course, we're going to learn how to use different code editors. But to close this lesson up, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys an actual code editor that I use, and the one I installed is called Notepad++. So if I look at our browser document that we made, that we saved it as, if we right click it, we can hit edit with this. And if you install your coding Notepad, whatever text editor you're using, usually there'll be an option to open it directly. And if we click edit with Notepad++, which is the one I'm using, we can see here that everything looks a little bit different than what it looks in Notepad. It looks a little bit more better. The code is easier to read. We have color coded. You can see that everything's a little bit more organized. And what we can do, which is pretty cool here, I'm going to close this here, is we can save this directly in here. Just hit save. We got to make a change first. So let's change this to all right, so let's give this a save. And if we close this, open up our browser again, we can see that it's instantly applied. So it saves us a lot of time between saving and whatnot. We can enter the file, edit the file directly. So what you're going to want to do is you want to get a text editor. I'm going to give you guys a link to Notepad++ that I use, but you can really use any coding text editor you want. You can spend a little bit of time looking at some options. There's a lot of free ones out there. There's even some paid ones, which are pretty good, but just grab anything you want for now. I recommend If you want to follow along with me throughout this course, you can use Notepad++, but it doesn't really matter what you have. Alright, so now let's look at some live examples of what JavaScript can do on the internet. Keep in mind that JavaScript is not to be confused with Java. Java and JavaScript are two very separate things. So, let's talk about Java very briefly. JavaScript first started out as a small language used for web applications to run on the web, but is now used as a powerful programming language online. We can see here that this website called the Interactive Ear is a cool little website used by JavaScript to really show us what the inner part of the ear is and different things like that. This is a nice interactive page that somebody built just using JavaScript. In the next example, we create digital chemistry, which is another interactive website that shows people different things about chemistry, and we have this nice little page that auto loads as we go down here. Some nice effects, all used with JavaScript. Maps.td is a website where we can look at different maps in the world. Keep in mind that Google Maps and Google Earth is also run by using JavaScript. Here we have somebody who created Command & Conquer using JavaScript. So this is a cool, very, very cool thing that somebody did to recreate the actual game itself just using JavaScript and HTML. Amazon, Cloud Reader, and Amazon's website uses a lot of JavaScript to function. The very popular Pinterest uses JavaScript, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and all those websites as well. Browser Quest, another video game based website online, all created with JavaScript. And we have this really cool game which is called Draw Stickman, which you basically are drawing a stickman using JavaScript. So pretty cool stuff we have going on here. So a lot of different interactive ways we can use online. So it takes a lot of hard work to build anything that I showed you so far in this video, but this course will teach you the basics and provide you with a strong foundation that you will need in order to get off to a good start online. So don't sweat it. In the next few lessons, you're going to be building your own JavaScript program as well. It won't be advanced as these examples, but everybody's going to start somewhere, and this is where you're going to start your journey in learning JavaScript online. It's very common to keep all of your JavaScript files separate from your HTML files. This helps you organize everything, especially once your files start to get really big. Make sure that when you create your JavaScript file, you don't put your HTML, CSS, or anything else in there. Just use JavaScript for now. We can see here in this document, I have inserted some JavaScript at the top here. We have a document.write command. If we save this page and open it, we can see that our JavaScript will be opened up at the very top of our page here for our web page content. Now, what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to take this JavaScript code and make it into a separate file, then import that file into our HTML document. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create the JavaScript we had before, and I'm going to create a new file and call it JS. We're then going to open up that Notepad file, and we're going to file save as js.js. It is important that you have the JavaScript file extension for this file in order for our computer to know that it is indeed a JavaScript file. We can see here that now that file is different, and we can delete our old Notepad file we had before. We are now going to open up and edit our new JavaScript file in our Notepad++ or whatever code editor you have. We're then going to take our command here, we're going to copy and paste it, then we're going to paste it into our new JavaScript file. We're going to delete what we have here. And next up, we are going to add some new tags. We're going to add a head tag here. And basically, the head tags you don't need to worry about now. We will explain it later. But just for now, in the head tags, we are actually going to import our JavaScript. So let's look at this command a little bit deeper. Now with this command in the quotations, what we do is write the file path to our external JavaScript file. You remember I named our file js.js. So as long as our file here is in the same folder as our HTML document, all we have to do is put the name of a file plus the extension, which in our case is JS. Before you preview this, make sure that you save your HTML document as well as your external JavaScript file. And we can see here that our JavaScript code is now displaying correctly in our external sheet. One thing that I'm going to point out really quickly is that the placement that we have our JavaScript on our web page can dramatically affect performance and the loadability of our web page. Generally speaking, you want to put your JavaScript at the bottom of your web page if possible. So I'm going to add some footer tags here. And I'm going to place my JavaScript source file in here. So now what happens here is that the web page content will load first, and then our JavaScript file will load right after. You can see here that now our JavaScript code is placed at the end of the document instead of appearing at the top. If at all possible, you always want to place it at the end. So for the rest of this course, I'm going to be creating all our lectures and all the coding content using external JavaScript files. If you need help with this, or you just can't get this to work, then please consult the teacher files that I will add to download that you can view. So to sum things up for this lecture, try to keep your JavaScript in an external file that is separate from your HTML and CSS. This will help you a lot as your projects get bigger. If possible, inserting your source code at the end of your HTML document will let the HTML load first and the JavaScript separate, increasing performance and page load speed of your website. Try linking your own external JavaScript file for practice and see if you can get it working correctly. Once you finish this, I will be waiting for you in the next lecture of the course. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to edit our JavaScript program. In our code here, we can see that I purposely made an error because I want to show you guys how we can actually use the console to debug our programs. Lastly, I have a console.log command here that's going to output this string directly to the console. Now, this string will not be seen by our visitors or users. Instead, it's there for developers to let us know that our program has completed, or we can also use it to store variables or just use messages to help make sure our program has run correctly. So let's give this a save. And now let's open up our program and let's see how we can fix it. So I open up a browser here and our code isn't working because we got an error. So I'm using Firefox here. I'm going to click up here and I'm going to go to Developer. In Developer, I'm going to go to Debugger. In the debugger, I can now go to the console, and in the JS section here, I can give it a click and it'll show me any errors I have in my script. Right now we're showing a syntax error and some errors in our HTML document, which aren't important because we're not actually working with HTML too much. But we can see here that we have a syntax error in our JavaScript program. So if your program isn't running or something's not working the way it's meant to work, chances are you have an error. So if we click on this section right here, a new window will pop up. We can see exactly where our error is. So we can see there's an error with this line of code. And I know it right now, we can see there's no quotes at the end of our string. So it's a great way to pinpoint exactly where errors are in our program. So let's close this. I'm going to go back in with our code here, edit up here, and I'm going to enter our string in. I'm going to give it a save. I'm going to hit F5 again. We can see now that our JavaScript is working. If we go into logging, we can also see our message that is inputted to the console. I'm just going to delete this for now, so we don't have to worry about it. Here's our text that we outputted earlier. So the console is used for commonly debugging programs, finding common syntax errors, and that kind of thing. There's a lot of features we can use with the console as well. For example, we can also type in commands here. Let's type in document.write. And I'm going to output a string to the page. Let's go with hello. And we can see here that we can actually run JavaScript within the console, which is pretty neat for running test codes and other things like that. Alright everybody, so I'm in the console challenge here, and these are the two documents that I have. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up our program here in the browser. I'm going to run the console. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at some of the errors that pop up here. We can see here that we have some syntax errors. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our actual document here. So I'm going to open up with my Notepad++. And in here, I'm just going to take a quick look and see if there's anything missing in the syntax. So we can see that our alert command looks like it's pretty fine. Our document.write command is pretty good. Oh, whoops, look at that. We're missing a bracket right here. So let's add that bracket in. Now that looks much better. Let's continue down the page. Console. We can see we're missing a G here. So we're just going to enter that in really quickly. And that looks pretty good. And in the next console.log, we can see here that everything looks pretty good, except for a very common mistake is if you guess we forgot the semicolon, then you are absolutely correct. So I'm going to stick that in there. And I'm going to save this file here. And I'm going to point out that you guys, a shortcut to save, instead of going File, Save every time you want to save, is you can hit Control S on Windows. So now our file has saved. If we open up a file again, we can see that we have our notification box pops up here. And we have fixed this line of code. So we have completed our challenge. Now, this is how I would go about debugging this program. You can use the console step by step, or if you're more seasoned, you can kind of take a quick look. By using the console, we could see that we had a couple syntax errors. So basically spelling mistakes, all that common stuff, not putting semicolons, that's, not closing your brackets, that's probably the most common thing that happens, especially when beginner JavaScript programmers start working with JavaScript. So if that ever happens, syntax is probably the first thing you want to check. So if you complete this program by yourself, I'm going to congratulate you. That's awesome. If you needed help, that's fine too. Everybody needs help here and there, and that's why I'm here. So now we have the solution to this program, and we're all good to go. In the next lecture, I'm going to give you guys a brief quiz and test you guys on the JavaScript basics that we learned so far. And then we're going to move on to the next section of the course, which is going to be learning about variables and all that kind of fun stuff in JavaScript.